Okay, just stop for a second and think about it. Your daily life, your money, where you go, who you talk to.
Hmm.
It all leaves this digital footprint.
A massive one. It's constantly flowing.
Exactly. But do you ever, like, really stop and think about who's actually looking at all that data? Who's collecting it, analyzing it?
Hmm.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into a company called Palantir. Now, they operate mostly, behind the curtain, but their influence, it's huge, it's global.
Yeah.
So our mission here is really to peel back those layers, understand this often invisible force that's shaping things.
Right. And our goal, just to be clear, is to explore Palantir based specifically on the sources we've looked at. We want to understand, what they actually do, sure, but also their global impact.
And the risks, too.
Absolutely. The risks, the concerns, also the powerful political connections behind them, and maybe surprisingly, the kind of ideology driving the founders.
It's quite a story.
It really is. This whole deep dive is basically a shortcut for you to understand how raw data gets turned into real-world power, often in ways you might not expect.
And trust us on this. What we found isn't just, a dry summary. It shows why Palantir isn't just another government contractor. They're more like an invisible player on the world stage. And that has real implications for you, for all of us. Okay, so let's unpack this. Palantir, what is it like at its absolute core?
Well, the sources describe it primarily as a data analytics company. Fundamentally, they build these really sophisticated platforms.
Right, platforms. For who, mainly?
Mainly governments, military organizations, and also some very large corporations. Their job, essentially, is to take huge amounts of data.
Yeah.
Often data that's completely separate, totally different format.
Like apples and oranges, data-wise.
Exactly. And merge it all, then analyze it, find the patterns. And they basically have two flagship products that the sources focus on. You've got Gotham first.
Gotham.
Yeah, that's the one heavily used by intelligence agencies. Military. Its function is pretty potent. We're talking about building detailed digital profiles on people or groups.
Wow.
Spotting patterns that, honestly, a human analyst would just never see. And even trying to sort of predict potential actions based on all that data.
Okay, that's Gotham. What's the other one?
The other main one is Foundry. Now, this one's used a bit more broadly. Think logistics, supply chains, optimizing complex systems.
Some more commercial applications, maybe?
Sometimes, but also government. And notably, as the sources point out, it's been used for things like monitoring populations. For instance, during public health crises like pandemics.
So just to be clear then, these aren't just like fancy spreadsheets or databases.
Oh, definitely not.
They're designed as these comprehensive platforms, intelligence platforms really, to handle just overwhelming floods of information.
Right. To make sense of the noise, to find those hidden links, those connections that you just couldn't see otherwise. And, one thing that really jumps out from the sources is just how big Palantir's global footprint is. It's quite something.
Yeah. Like, who are we talking about client-wise?
Well, in the U.S., you've got major agencies, the FBI, the Pentagon, ICE, pretty heavy hitters.
Okay.
But it's not just the U.S. It extends to foreign governments, too. The sources specifically mention clients like Israel and Ukraine as prominent examples.
And what are they actually using this tech for? The sources must detail that.
Oh, yeah. It's incredibly varied. Everything from, broad surveillance programs to really specific battlefield intelligence.
Yeah.
Helping with military targeting. And, as we mentioned with Foundry, tracking complex supply chains.
That's an incredible range of applications.
It is. And what becomes really clear, and this is a point the sources really emphasize, is that these tools don't just, help powerful institutions do their jobs better. They fundamentally amplify their power.
Ah, okay. So it's not just efficiency, it's more power.
Exactly. It's a step change. The sources suggest Palantir basically provides this kind of God's eye view for these institutions.
A God's eye view.
Yeah, like a level of insight, maybe even prediction, that really redefines what government or military power looks like now in the digital age.
Which I imagine leads directly into the risks.
Precisely. And often, as we'll get into, this comes with major questions about, privacy, human rights.
Okay, so that amplification you mentioned, that really brings us to some critical concerns that the sources raise about Palantir's work. The first big one seems to be this potential for what people are calling a surveillance state.
Absolutely. That's a major theme. The sources explain how Palantir's technology enables the creation of these huge centralized databases. Systems where, theoretically, a government could access almost everything about you.
Everything? Like what?
Your taxes, where you've traveled, any criminal history, maybe even who you communicate with. potentially all pulled together, instantly accessible. And, this obviously raises a massive question. What does that do to individual liberty, to the basic structure of society, when that much personal data can just be aggregated and analyzed on command?
It's a chilling thought. And then there's this other risk they talk about, mission creep.
Right. Mission creep.
So the idea is these tools get brought in under the banner of, say, national security, right? Fighting terrorism or something.
That's usually the justification, yes.
But the sources warn they could easily be repurposed, turned against political opponents, maybe journalists asking awkward questions.
Or even just ordinary citizens who aren't a threat at all, but maybe dissent in some way.
Exactly. The potential for misuse seems enormous once the infrastructure is in place.
And that ties into another key concern highlighted in the sources.
Yeah.
This idea of an arms race in data.
An arms race. Explain that.
Well, the thinking is once governments get a taste of this kind of power, this level of data analysis, they won't give it up.
Right. It's addictive, almost.
Kind of. Demand just keeps growing.
Yeah.
They want more data, better analysis. It creates this powerful feedback loop, a self-perpetuating system that just expands and expands, pulling more and more data into its orbit.
Okay. But to really grasp Palantir, the sources suggest we need to look beyond just the tech itself. We need to look at the people behind it.
Definitely.
And the philosophy, maybe, the ambition driving it all. This is where, honestly, it gets really fascinating.
Yeah, it does.
We're talking about the founders. Peter Thiel, most people know him, right? PayPal co-founder, early Facebook money.
A big name in Silicon Valley for sure.
And the other key founder, Alex Karp, who, interestingly, has a PhD in philosophy, not your typical tech CEO background.
No, not at all. And their backgrounds definitely hint that this isn't just your average tech startup. And those early connections are also incredibly revealing. The boards would point out that Palantir got some crucial early funding from In-Q-Tel.
In-Q-Tel, remind me.
That's the CIA's venture capital arm.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
CIA's investment fund.
Exactly. So that connection right from the start really aligned Palantir very closely with U.S. national security interests. It set a certain trajectory for the company.
And Peter Thiel,
Yeah.
his political influence is, well, pretty significant, isn't it?
Undeniable. The sources really dig into this, his support for certain politicians, like J.D. Vance, for example. But it's more than just donations. It's his strategic approach building these networks, like one called Rockbridge. The sources describe these as being specifically designed to build and maintain influence in Washington.
To protect Palantir, essentially. Ensure it keeps getting those contracts.
That seems to be a key part of the strategy, yes. It's about building this sort of foundational infrastructure of influence, not just relying on lobbying. And if you connect those dots, the sources paint this picture of what they call a closed-loop dynamic.
The closed loop, what does that mean?
It's like this cycle. You have billionaires like Thiel funding politicians. Then those politicians get into positions where they can approve big government contracts.
Contracts that might go to companies like Palantir.
Precisely. Which then makes the company more powerful, generates more revenue, which can then be used to fund more politicians. And the cycle just repeats and reinforces itself.
Wow. So it shows this really deep meshing of tech power and political power.
A very deep intertwining, yeah.
Yeah.
It's presented as a self-reinforcing system.
And it gets even deeper, doesn't it, into the actual ideology behind Palantir, or at least behind its founders. The sources mention transhumanism.
That's right. Thiel and, to some extent, Karp are associated with transhumanist ideas.
Okay, what exactly is transhumanism, for anyone who hasn't come across it?
Well, broadly speaking, it's a philosophical movement that views technology as more than just a tool to fix problems or make life easier.
Okay.
Transhumanists often see technology as a means to fundamentally redesign humanity, to enhance our capabilities, overcome biological limitations, maybe even eventually transcend biology altogether.
Right. That raises some pretty big ethical flags, doesn't it? Especially when you combine that philosophy with the kind of data power Palantir has.
Huge ethical considerations, absolutely. And there's one particular signal from the sources that's, well, quite disturbing.
Go on.
Thiel has apparently publicly expressed some hesitation, let's say, about whether the human race should actually endure.
Wait, seriously, he questioned whether humanity should continue.
That's what the sources report. And when you consider that perspective, alongside the immense power his company is accumulating through data, it's a genuinely chilling thought.
Okay, so bringing this all together,
Yeah.
what's the big takeaway for us? for the listener. The sources seem to be saying Palantir isn't just, a vendor selling software.
Far from it.
They're positioning it as this invisible player, almost, in global politics,
Yeah.
shaping things behind the scenes, often without anyone really noticing.
That's the core insight, yes.
Yeah.
Operating in the shadows, influencing dynamics, often without much public awareness or accountability. And here's a really crucial point for you, listening right now. Ordinary people. We often don't have a choice about being part of Palantir's system.
What do you mean, no choice?
Well, your data. It
Yeah.
flows into these systems whether you actively click agree or not. Just by living your life in our connected world, paying taxes, traveling, using services, your information becomes part of the data streams they analyze. There's often no real opt-out.
So we're all kind of implicated, whether we know it or consent to it.
In many ways, yes. That's the implication.
And the final message from the sources, it frames this whole situation in a very specific way, doesn't it? It's not about left versus right politics.
No, they're quite clear on that. It's presented less as a partisan issue and more as, well, the sources literally phrase it as an us versus them scenario.
Us versus them.
Meaning
Sorry.
ordinary people
Hmm?
versus a kind of elite class that's using this incredibly powerful technology to consolidate its control and influence.
Right. And just to reiterate for everyone listening, that specific framing us versus them that comes directly from the source material we analyze, we're reporting their perspective here.
Exactly. It's important to be clear about that.
Okay. We have covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive on Palantir, how it works, its incredible global reach.
The very serious concerns it raises.
Yeah, and the powerful people, the money, and even the pretty unsettling ideologies driving it. Our whole aim here was to kind of cut through the complexities.
Synthesize the key insights.
Right, give you, the listener, a shortcut to really understanding this major but often hidden force in our world today.
So maybe as you finish listening, as you go about your day, just carry this question with you. What does it really mean for our freedom, our autonomy, for society itself?
Yeah.
When these incredibly powerful data tools are operating largely out of sight,
Mm-hmm.
and when our personal data is the essential fuel they run on.
That's definitely something worth mulling over. We really hope you keep that curiosity going. Maybe look around and see how these kinds of dynamics, this data and power interplay, might be showing up elsewhere in your world.